Loren, how are you?
I'm doing great. Nobody can see this, but I'm in Arizona soaking up a little sun as we record. How are you doing?
I am well. I am back in Baltimore where we were delayed
Yeah,
getting
I'm
home
sorry.
because of a
Yeah.
snowstorm.
Where were you?
Stuck for a couple days. Las Vegas. So I mean,
Ah,
it's not a bad place to be, but
high
when you're
roller.
done with Vegas, you're definitely done with Las
Oh, yeah.
Vegas. So
Yeah.
we're back. Hey, Loren.
Hi, Kelsey.
Are you ready for another episode of Campus Confidential?
Very ready. This is a different and good one.
Ooh, different and good. I think that's true. We decided to invite a coach, a real
coach.
athletic coach. I think we're all coaches in some ways, but
Well, he might say that's true. We're all coaching
yeah.
in some way, right?
That is true. Why don't you tell everyone who our guest is for today?
We have with us today Coach Pete Shinnick, who just completed his second year as head coach at Towson University in Baltimore. Really, really energetic and inspiring guy. He has been there a couple of years, as I mentioned. Previously was at the University of West Florida, where he won a national championship, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Previously head coach also at UNC Pembroke and Azusa Pacific out in California. Like a lot of coaches, has had stops at many other places coming up through the ranks, assistant coaches and that sort of thing at Richmond, Arkansas, Clemson, Oregon State, Northern Michigan, St. Cloud State, and Humboldt State. He was named Coach of the Year twice, the most recent one being University of West Florida, as I mentioned, where he was won a national championship. And, being Coach of the Year is a pretty notable thing. Here's some other names that people might know also won Coach of the Year. Brian Kelly, that name ring a bell? Now at LSU head coach, but he won Coach of the Year when he was at Grand Valley State. Chan Gailey at Troy State, then became head coach of Buffalo Bills. So some big names. This is a big, a small group of big names that Coach Pete Shinnick's in. He was a 4-year player at Division I University of Colorado, a frequent speaker on creating positive culture, and the son of Baltimore Colts Super Bowl champion legend Don Shinnick, who's got several NFL records. So his pedigree is pretty significant.
Yeah, he is. And he is, I think both of us during the interview were both such sports people. It's like, I just want to keep listening to you and ask random questions. So I had to stay on the leadership, on the leadership track. But there was so many nuggets. And when you think about the role of a coach of a team and setting a vision, and the role of a leader on a team and setting a vision, he talked about having to manage your vision in a way that other people could follow. And I was like, yes. And how
that was great.
It takes in, I don't know that he said these words, but for me, the intentionality around managing your vision, especially as you move up in leadership roles, seems critically important for people to be able to follow your vision, implement your vision, support it, and know that they're part of the right team.
Yeah. And he talked about, speaking of vision, he talked about how you want to find people that can share your vision, but don't necessarily need to do it the way you would do it. In other words, without that vision agreement, that vision congruence, you're not going to be on the same page. And how important being clear about your own vision and sharing that with, potential employees and colleagues is as well. I thought that was really great. The other thing that I also loved was he talked about all these, you asked them a question about all these career changes that he's made, as common in coaching and what that was like for him and how important it is to do what you're doing, the job you're in, to do it with excellence before you think about other jobs. And he unpacked that more in the episode, but I just thought that was really great.
Yeah, he was good. And I think this is when people might want to have a pen and paper ready or go back, because there was a lot of nuggets of methods or process or how he thinks about things that I think are incredibly translatable from a sports team to a team in a leadership role of any kind.
And I also liked when I told him I had eligibility left, he said, "That's great. You're probably going to use it somewhere else." because we want to win tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that your age qualifies. All right. Well, let's take a listen. Hello, everyone. Today we are super excited. Coach Pete, how are you today?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're really excited. Coach, we are so excited. We talk about leadership all the time, and to have a coach of a team, we believe a lot of people in leadership roles play a coach role, but to have someone with the title is our honor, and we're super excited about it. I've been thinking a little bit about what the first question would be for you. And the thing that keeps coming up for me is, do you remember when or how you decided you wanted to become a football coach?
So my dad coached. All right. So I always admired what he did and, watching him have a positive impact on people's lives. I always felt like I would, work because I got a business degree. I got a marketing degree. So I always thought I would work and then kind of coach on the side. And that would be how I would be involved in it. And my senior year, I got an internship and it paid pretty good money at a steel and metal corporation in Southern California. And so I did marketing, I did accounting, I did bill collection, I did everything. And, I got free housing, I got free lunch, and I got a gas card, and they paid me pretty well. So, it was like, man, this is going to be awesome. 3 weeks into it, I am bored to death. And I am like, oh my gosh, if this is what this type of lifestyle is, there's no way I can do it. And so I made the commitment at that point in time, 3 weeks into this, summer internship of working 40, 50 hours a week, to just say, okay, I need to be a coach. Since I made the decision to get into coaching, it's a completely opposite feeling. And so, people say you got to love what you do to make it work, and you got to love being there. I enjoy every aspect of what I do. And I think coaching is a unique combination of a lot of different traits. If I had to coach games 52 weeks out of the season, I don't think I could do it because that's an extremely demanding component. But I can do it for 20 weeks, you know what I mean? And that works well for me. If I had to recruit for 52 weeks out of the year at the level that we recruit, when we're visiting houses and visiting high schools and doing all that, I don't think I could do that. And then if we only had the off season, which is what we're in now. So I love how it's broken up. I love the different combinations of it. And it really has been very fulfilling and very satisfying for me. And so, again, I knew at that moment, I knew in that summer internship, this is what I wanted to do and have not looked back really ever since.
It's funny, we talk about the season, but what you just described is seasons really to a coach's life, it seems to me. And I'm wondering when before we came on to this recording, you talked about you love what being a coach means. I wonder can you describe what does it mean to be a coach to you, and how has that changed from that decision point you just mentioned, if it has changed? What does it mean to be coach?
Yeah, and if you look at just the pure definition of the word coach, it means to instruct. Okay, and so there isn't the original version is to carry someone, from one place to another back in the 1800s, a coach, you know what I mean? So that wasn't very exciting. But if you look at just the definition of coach, it's really just to instruct. And so what I say is, as a coach, that should be obviously the minimum of what we do. Okay. And so I've used this in a lot of conversations about leadership. I think there's 5 levels of leadership. Okay. And I think there's 5 stages that you go through. Okay. Stage 1 is you got to state the obvious. Okay. So if you're coaching someone or you're in a business corporation and they're doing it wrong or doing it right, you got to state the obvious. Hey, that's a great job. You handed me the right folder. You got me the right information. Okay. As a coach, if all you ever did was state the obvious, okay, then I think you're really missing out on what this thing looks like. Hey, you dropped the ball. Hey, you stepped on the wrong foot. Hey, you missed the tackle. Okay. Anybody could really do that. I say level 2 is to coach, which is to instruct. Now I'm going to put a little bit behind that as, hey, this is how you do this. This is what this looks like. Level 3 is where I think, everybody needs to live at, and that's to teach. Because when you're teaching, now you are helping them learn, you are helping them understand, you are giving them skills that not only build upon the instruction part of it, but now you're giving them something that they can take away. Okay. And so I tell our coaches, we got to live in the teaching element. We still got to state the obvious. You jumped off sides. That's stating the obvious. We want you to hold on to the ball, not fumble it. That's stating the obvious. But we got to go beyond that. So, we got to instruct and teach. And then for me, level 4 is motivation, okay? Because how do I get someone to go beyond just doing what I ask them to do? How do I get them to do it on their own? How do I get them to see it in the moment? And so to me, motivation is really kind of a situational portion of the 4 phases. And then the 5th phase for me is inspire, because I was inspired by my father watching him impact and influence people in a positive way, that I wanted to make this my profession. I wanted to make this something that I do. And so every day I wake up, I'm inspired to be a coach. I still got to state the obvious. I still got to coach. I still got to instruct, and I still got to motivate in that. But the driving force is, what we're trying to do. So I tell our guys, look, we got to live in the teaching component, but we have to motivate and inspire to get a team to go beyond where they are and what they're trying to do. So hopefully that answers what you were looking for there.
It does. And I want to bring together kind of your dad and his experience as a coach, your place that you're in. When you think about your career over time, was there any time you needed to call your dad to get some motivation or inspiration or help you kind of stay on the path, whatever that might be?
Well, most definitely. Yeah. And unfortunately, my dad passed away about 20 years ago. So, I've been coaching probably about the first 16, 17 years of my coaching. He was there. But yeah, it was a constant communication there when I got into it. You know what I mean? And probably some of the best advice that my dad ever gave me. There was a ton of it, but one of the main ones is don't ever forget what it's like to be a player. You know what I mean? I think as coaches grow and develop, they come up with, what their players should be doing, how their players should be doing it. And it's like, okay, do you remember what it's like to wear a helmet, to wear shoulder pads, to wear pants in 105-degree weather in Maryland? Do you remember what that's like? So when you're asking your guys to do things, don't ever forget what that's like. Also, the mind frame of an 18-year-old as opposed to the mind frame of a 23-year-old. Little different. 18-year-old, it's kind of like, see squirrel, chase squirrel. That's kind of the thought process, right?
Yes,
we got to be able to, kind of reel that in a little bit. So, when we ask the guy to go hard, it's great. But no, I relied heavily on him, and a lot of what I do now is really based on those conversations, as well as just watching him also interact. And probably one of the most satisfying components of being back in the Baltimore area, because dad playing for the Baltimore Colts, is to run into people who were around him kind of off the field. My dad did a lot of speaking for different organizations in the off season. So it's been fun to just, hey, your dad came and spoke to my Rotary Club, in 1965, or your dad spoke to my men's group at the church in, 1967, whatever it is. And so, again, that was kind of the impact that I wanted to have a positive impact on people's lives, wanted to be able to use this platform to be able to, take that. And so I think without his background and without his, his input, I don't know where I'd be today. So very thankful for that.
Yeah, and there you are back in Baltimore too, which is really just kind of a beautiful thing that you're back in the city where you were born in Baltimore. Is that right?
Born in Towson, Baltimore Memorial Hospital, right down the road.
It's wonderful. And your dad played
It's like
there.
a full circle life.
It is, yeah.
I hope I accurately attribute this to your dad, but I think he might have said, coach the whole person. Is this something your dad?
Well, Whether he said it that way, but I mean that was really part of who he was. I mean, he was a guy that, everybody's going through something, and I have one question that I make my coaches ask. Guy shows up and he's not the same. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's say you got a wide receiver and all of a sudden he's been catching everything. And then all of a sudden we go out there and he drops the first 3 balls that are thrown to him. The first question, and this is where that whole person component comes in. First question that we ask is, okay, what's going on off the field? Because something this guy has brought onto the playing field is got to be from the outside. Because the first 5 days he was with us, he was doing everything right. Now, all of a sudden, something is clouding his mind. Something is keeping him from being where he's at. Once you do that, it's like, okay, let's figure out now how we can make that work and still have a productive day. And our program goal number 1 for us is help each player become a better husband, father, employer, employee. So everything that we deal with is how do we set them up for a successful future? How do we get them to start looking beyond just the end of their nose and what's going on in their own life, but to then say, okay, you know what? The decisions I'm making now are going to be relevant to what is taking place later on in my life. So one of the ways we approach it is we have a deal called the 3 sets of 3. And the middle part of the 3 sets of 3 is, their behavior. All right. So in their behavior, we say be on time. Okay. And the way we phrase it is be early to everything. We say be honest. And then we say no cussing, PG mentality. All right. I had these things in place. And the COO for Cisco organization, his son played for me at Azusa Pacific. And he came and did a seminar on how to get hired and how to keep a job at Cisco. And his 2 main points were, look, if you're early to everything, you're going to separate yourself from 95% of the other people. You're going to stand out. If you're honest in your dealings, you're probably going to be better than 75% of the people who are there. So I was like, all right, man, we already have be honest. We already have be early. I said, look, if you throw in the no cussing component, you're probably going to stand out even more, keep the job longer, get the raise quicker, and be promoted at a faster pace. So it was already built in. So it was like, all right. So every time I share those 3 parts of the 3 sets of 3, it goes back to how am I helping this guy become a better husband, a better father, a better employer, and a better employee. So, I mean, to me, it all ties together as to, that complete person. With that being said, my job hasn't changed. I still got to motivate. I still got to teach. I still got to inspire. I still got to coach. So I got to figure out how to frame that and work that to coach the whole person to have the same result, because our fans don't care that the kids have changed. Our fans don't care that we have all this information out there. All they look at is, are you going to be successful with what you're doing with the young men that you have under your care?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you're coaching players on the field, but you're also, I have to assume, coaching other coaches, right? You're in this like multi-layer leadership role.
They're developing too.
As you think about that kind of 3 distinct chapters of the way the players have changed, how have you had to change as a coach or coaching your coaches through that process?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so, I mean, I've been very blessed, very fortunate to hire really good people. And so, first thing I'm going to look for is what type of person am I hiring? So, I mean, if you hire someone who has the same thought process and the same desires that you have. And, what I do is I have a portion of my coaching manual that I will send to everybody that we're interviewing. As a matter of fact, trying to hire 2 volunteer assistant coaches right now. And they're just as important because they're going to be around our players. So it's like, hey, here's a portion of my manual. You've really got to believe in my vision and what I see before we even talk about this job. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. A few years back, I was looking for a defensive coordinator. Okay. And I mean, I've had the no cussing PG mentality, for my entire head coaching career. So I've been doing it for about, 18, 19 years. Everybody who knows me knows that. So this guy, I interview him, and I mean, it was hilarious. But he gets on there and he's like, Coach, I effing want you to know that I'm just so effing thankful to have this effing opportunity to be able to talk. I've done research on you and you're blankety blank blank and and I'm like, okay, this guy has no idea who I am. Okay, for this deal. So it was about a 10-minute interview. Hey man, that sounds great. Good. Tell me a little bit about, okay, good. Boom. And so with that being said, I send out and say, look, man, read through this. If there's anything in what I talk about, if there's anything in what I do that you don't agree with, all right, this isn't the place for you because we're going to butt heads and it's going to be conflicting. So it's, for me in recruiting a coach and recruiting a player, it's kind of the same deal. I'm going to set the bar very high as to what my expectations are. If they don't want to meet them, I'd rather lose them in the recruiting process than lose them in, October, game 8, and now they're frustrated with how we're doing things. Part of being a relational coach and part of doing what we do is really making sure that, we're really in this for the players. Okay. And I understand why people aren't relationship coaches because players aren't always going to treat you right. And so, I've had players say a lot of bad things about me to my face, tell me things that, I didn't think were true because they were frustrated in the moment. Fortunately for me, I've been doing this a long time. I mean, I've had guys reach out in their 20s and some in their 30s, or I'd say 30s and 40s. Hey, coach, hope you're doing well. I really appreciate everything you did. I know it didn't end well with us, but, now I'm in this business and I understand why you did what you did. So I've had a lot of that. But in the moment, when you're a relationship person, you're going to have those negative components. And so I tell our coaches, if you're going to do it the way we do it, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. You're going to set yourself up for hurt. The other way to do it is don't care about anybody and it's only about you. You'll never get hurt, but you'll also be lonely. And you'll also be down a track that doesn't get you anything. So I'm going to choose this way. And it's the same thing with our coaches. You know what I mean? And I've had to let go of coaches. I've had to change coaches. That's part of the business. But with that being said, it's always been, hey, look, I'm going in this direction. You're going in that direction. We're not meeting. I thought when we came together and I hired you that this is what we were getting. I don't think we're at that place right now.
Your story's great. And the fact that those players decades later reach back out says something about the period of time they spent with you and spent with other coaching, with the program. And that's really admirable. Let me ask you this question. I imagine some listeners would think, might wonder, help me understand the difference between a vision that I'm asking others to sign up for or is there a difference between the vision that I want you to adopt and my way of doing it? How do you draw that distinction? How would leaders in any organization know that distinction to help create sort of a unified direction, but different maybe ways of getting where we need to go so that it all results in the success we share?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I really do. And so for me, a vision, to have a vision, you got to have a purpose behind the vision and you got to have a reason behind the vision. And you've got to be able to systematically lay out what you're trying to accomplish. My way or the highway is like, hey, we're going to do it this way. I don't care whether it works or not. This is what we're doing. You know what I mean? So, I think a lot of coaches do things and they don't know why they do them. Or that a lot of corporations, the same thing. I mean, 20 years ago is like, okay, hey, we got to have a plan. That was all the business deal. Hey, everybody's got to have a plan. Okay. Well, I had a plan once to lose weight and it involved pizza and ice cream. Didn't work well, but I had a good plan. You know what I mean? It sounded good. Okay.
It fulfilled the plan.
Yeah, exactly. I had a plan. People said I got to have a plan. Okay. Well, I got one. So then, it went from, you got to have a great plan, you know what I mean? And you got to map it out. What does it look like? So for me, my job is to set the vision and the reason and the understanding behind everything that we do and why we do it, and then tying it all back to the vision. Again, leaders need to cast visions. Leaders need to set the tempo for what's taking place. And then, a great follower is someone who says, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with every component of this, but if I'm going to catch this vision for him, I got to put my own ego aside. I got to put my own thoughts aside on this, and I got to buy in. Okay. And so, again, going back to my way or the highway, it's like, hey, we're just going to do this. I don't want people to just do it to do it. I want people to understand it. And, probably the best thing that, I would say that I could do right now is if I was ever someone's assistant coach, having been a head coach now for 27 years, I think I'd be a really good assistant coach as far as understanding what the head coach wanted. When I was an assistant coach, there was a lot of me involved in it. I was still trying to get my own agenda. I don't know that I was a great assistant coach. I'd like to think that I wasn't terrible, but there was also, I don't know if that's really the best thing. And what it taught me was, okay, I could have been such a better assistant coach. So now as a head coach, I'm trying to teach the assistant coaches as to why this is important, what the significance of it is, and then how we all come together on it. And so, again, that goes back to sharing what my expectations are, what the finer details of that is before we bring somebody on. It isn't my way or the highway. It's like, do you get it? Do you understand it? Because there's a reason behind it. But don't come here if you don't get it. Does that make sense?
It does. So I think about, folks that are sitting out there. It's like, okay, I try to create a vision. You've moved and had a number of different coaching roles. So talk about what that transition have those transitions been like along the way? Have they all kind of been that? Have you been clear as you've been in the head coaching roles all the way, or has that evolved over time?
Yeah, no, that's definitely evolved. Now, I mean, probably another great advice that my dad gave me is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get fired for what you believe in. Okay. And that was more from a moralistic standpoint and approach of building culture, and he would follow that up with, hey, look, if you can't throw the ball, then don't try to throw the ball 80 times a game. You got to learn how to run the ball. That's not what he was talking about. He was talking about, what are your values? What are the characteristics that you want your team to be? Somebody comes and says, hey, we're going to have to cheat to win. That's not something that I want to be a part of. Or, hey, we're going to have to do this and that. No, it's not what I want to be. So he said, don't be afraid of, losing your job over your values, your morals, and your standards for your program. Now, with that, what has that looked like? Okay. And what has that grown to over the years? And for me, it's, when I started out, I felt like I had to say something, inspiring every day. I didn't come up with the 5 levels of coaching until about my 17th year of coaching. Okay. So before then it was like, man, I just got to pump them full of stuff, keep doing stuff. So,
every time I see a coach on TV, I want to be inspired. So I could feel that pressure for you.
No. And so then about year 16, 17, it was like, okay, you know what do my guys know about what I'm talking about? So I started asking them basic questions about things that I thought were the core of the program. And because I was pumping them full of so many other things, all that stuff kind of got diluted. So really for the last 10, 15 years, have really just started to simplify and hone in on who we are and what we do. Okay. So the 4 things that we really emphasize and the 4 things that we talk about a lot are program goal or program theme, arete, Greek word for excellence, living up to one's fullest potential, moral virtue, excellence of any kind. So that's going to be on their shirts. That's going to be on their notebooks. That's going to be in our locker room. We want you to live up to your fullest potential. We want you to be an excellent husband, an excellent father, an excellent employer, an excellent employee. Second thing we're going to talk about a lot are our core values: smart, hard work, positive energy, and unity. So everything we do, if you come watch us practice, if you come watch us meet, if you come watch us interact, if you come watch us in the weight room, you should see smart, hard work, unity, and positive energy. No matter what you're watching us do, those things should come out. And it's probably been the best compliment that we've gotten from NFL scouts who have come and visited us, because they're like, man, you guys are really organized. You guys move. You guys do a great job. There's something different about it. Then I tell him, well, we don't cuss. And he's like, yeah, I noticed that. Guys, we're coaching instead of yelling at people. But yeah, that's part of the deal. We're getting better. So when you're not yelling at somebody and you can't call them blankety, 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 blank, you got to say, okay, now I at least got to teach. in that process. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we do, those three things should come out. And then every decision that we make as a coach should really come down to, are we helping them program goal number one? Are we helping them become better husbands, fathers, employers, employees? Program goal number two, graduate in 4 or 4.5 years. And program goal number three, play great football. So with that, you don't see in our goals, win a national championship, win playoffs, do all that. Play great football, be a great person leads to that, in my opinion. It's kind of the John Wooden process. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then the fourth thing that we spend, a lot of time on, all right, is our 3 sets of 3. And I mentioned the middle part of that. Another part of that is be a great communicator. Okay. Put the team first in all your actions, seek arete daily. So what I've done over the last 10, 12 years is really just focus on those things where I'm really honing in on every aspect of that, as opposed to trying to come up with a new quote every day or trying to come up with some other point. So what I do now is get a quote that draws back to arete, get a quote that draws back to program goals, get a quote that draws back to core values, get a quote that draws back to the 3 sets of 3. So everything kind of ties in. So I think I've become a much better manager of the vision by condensing what I talk about and broadening it through different examples, as opposed to being just this wide spread out, talk about everything, but really not talk about anything at all.
I love that. Kelsey and I have talked a lot on this podcast and with guests about courage and how you find courage and how, and those moments when you have to express courageous decisions. And this whole point you're making that your dad helped you with and you're helping listeners with about don't be afraid to get fired for things you believe in is really about having the courage to trust your own value system and conviction. So I just love that. So thanks for sharing that.
No, appreciate that.
Let me ask a follow-up to this, multiple jobs kind of thing. This is common in higher education, maybe more common in coaching. But when you have looked at these opportunities, how should people in higher education or leaders of any type evaluate when it's time to make a change? And how do you evaluate the opportunities being presented to you to know if that's one that will align with where you want to go in your own life and your own career? Do you have advice there?
Yeah, I think there's 2 components to that. Okay, first off, as an assistant coach, all right, I was trying to feed my family. I was trying to find the best situation possible. So I think as an assistant coach, it's really about, okay, how do I position myself to where I want to be? Now, with that being said, the best job you have is the best job you can get is the one you have, because at least they're paying you.
Good advice.
In our profession, they say there's 2 types of coaches. Those who have been fired and those who are going to be fired. You know what I mean? So which category do you fit in? And, I didn't get fired because until my head coach got fired about year 5, 6 into it. So I think as an assistant coach, you're always trying to say, for me, I made a decision early on because 2 things were very important to me. My time and my culture were very important to me. How those things were managed were very important to me. So I made a decision early on that I wanted to be a head coach, and I didn't care what level. I just wanted to be in charge of the program so that I can control my time and control my culture. Okay. So as an assistant coach, I think making the decisions is how do I make a decision that gets me to where I want to get to? But at the same time, you got to go in with it. And I think a lot of assistant coaches really miss out on the impact that they could have because they're always looking for the next opportunity. You got to be where you are. You got to take advantage of, the situation in front of you. Because if you don't do a great job there, you're not going to get another job because you're not going to have a great reputation. And so, yes, you want to advance, and yes, you want to, propel yourself to the next job. But if you're not great at what you do, then you'll never get the recommendation of the person, who you're currently working for. So, be great where you're at, take full advantage of what you have. And then I think those opportunities come. And every opportunity I got was because I was doing a really good job at the place that I was at. And again, I said earlier, I think I could have done a much better job now looking back on it. But it was still enough to advance. When I became a head coach, I have yet to take a head coaching job that I didn't feel like I could stay the rest of my life. Okay. And so I've left 3 head coaching jobs, but when I took it, I could have stayed there. So Azusa Pacific, NAIA, I could have stayed there literally, until they dropped the program, which I, disappointed that they did that about 15 years after I left. But I really could have stayed there. And so in taking the next job, I wasn't going to take something that wasn't much better than what I had. And so I left Azusa Pacific to go to UNC Pembroke, where we started a program from scratch. Okay. I could have stayed at Pembroke literally. And, that was part of the conversation in leaving. Hey, man, they love you here. They know, you've done a great job. You could stay. And it's like, no, I get that. But, I'd been at Azusa Pacific 7 years. I'd been at UNC Pembroke 8 years. And somewhere in there, it was like, I want the next challenge. Okay. And I don't ever want to get complacent with where I'm at. And I don't ever want to be in a routine where it's just like, okay, I'm doing it to do it. I want to challenge myself. I want to put myself in a position where, this is hard and this isn't easy. And I got to get up and I got to work my tail off. Okay. And so I left UNC Pembroke to start a program at the University of West Florida. Okay. Which is an arduous task to start a program from scratch. I mean, it's brutal, but it paid off. But, so then I was there 9 years and literally, we won a national championship. We've been to 3 Final Fours. We'd won 2 conference championships. Things were going really well. And people were like, why would you leave West Florida to come to Baltimore, to come to Towson? And I saw it as the next challenge in my life. And I saw it as the next step of, okay, you know what? It's not going to be easy. I could have stayed at West Florida. It would have been a whole lot easier, been a lot less stressful staying at West Florida. But I wanted to finish strong. You know what I mean? I wanted this phase of my life to be, as challenging and as invigorating, as, the first stages of my life. And so, I thought this was a big challenge. This is a program that I think has tremendous potential, but not necessarily, going in the direction that they wanted it to. And anytime you make a change, there's 2 reasons they make change. One, you have great success and the other guy gets a better job, or one, they don't have great success and the other guy gets fired. You know what I mean? So when you replace somebody who's fired, there's problems in the program. There's things that have been, that needed to be greatly addressed. And so with that, I saw this as a great challenge. So for me, leaving again, I could have stayed. I could have stayed at West Florida, my entire career. I could have finished it out, and I still think I would have found ways to be challenged because I'd been offered other jobs, before Towson, and I turned them down because I didn't think they were better than the West Florida job, and they were FCS jobs, but I didn't think they were better than a D2 job because, I felt like we had great situation there. So this one came along and it really kind of checked all the boxes that I was looking for. And so that to me was, okay, I wanted a new challenge. I wanted something different, but it's gotta be the right situation. And it's gotta be something that really gets all the things that I'm looking for. And, part of that in every higher education, I don't care if you're a dean, I don't care if you're a vice president, I don't care if you're a head coach. If your 2 bosses are not on the same page, then I think you got tremendous issues. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I've got a great athletic director in Steve Eigenbrot. Okay. And, I knew when I met him what his vision was and what he wanted and where he wanted to take this athletic department. There was a little bit of an unknown because we didn't have a president. I don't know if it's because I got hired, but, our president resigned the day I got hired. I don't know if there's anything, correlation. Took the Louisville job, so I'm sure she's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we have been blessed with an amazing president who catches the vision of Steve Eigenbrot, which then keeps all 3 of us aligned as to where we want to go. So, yeah. I think as you look to it, you got to ask yourself internally, okay, why am I taking it? If you leave just to leave, to me, it's kind of like breaking up in a relationship. Somebody says they've broken up 6-7 times in a relationship because they haven't found the right person. Well, maybe you're not the right person. Okay. And the same thing with, well, I've left this boss because he was this way. I've left this boss because he was this way. Maybe there's something in you. So again, every place I've been, I think I could stay.
Well, I heard 2 things in that I want to lift up for our listeners too. One is be great in the job you have. If you're looking for additional, be really, really great at the one you're in. I think you said got to be where you are. I think that's great. The other one was And when you take that job, do it as if you're going to be there forever. If you're just climbing, it's going to show in how you perform and how you relate to other people. So, I mean, I love those. And in fact, I can remember one individual once who used to complain about the job, wanted to be promoted all the time. And I did not promote her to this role that she thought she ought to have. And I said, the best way to get the next one is to do the one you're in really well. And I feel, so it resonates with me, and I really appreciate that. I think it's good advice for listeners.
No, and I'll give you a quarterback example. Tom Brady at Michigan, he said, if today's world was around, he probably would have gotten in the transfer portal. But he shares the story of he was complaining, whining, moaning, groaning about not getting reps. And then he went and saw the sports psychologist right there. And the sports psychologist said, so why are you whining? Why are you complaining? He's like, well, everybody else gets 5 reps. I only get 2. And so the number one piece of advice from the guy is like, you take your 2 reps and you prepare like it's the Super Bowl. And when you get in there, you do everything you possibly can to just make this thing go. Don't worry about how many reps anybody else gets. You just take it. And then Brady's like, I did that. I'd run into the huddle.
It worked out okay for him.
Boom. Worked out pretty good.
Seems to have worked out all right. So one other thing that comes to mind and through all of this is, Coach, you have others that come along with you from a personal perspective. So family, how has family played a role for you in your coaching career and making these moves?
Oh yeah, no. And I mean, some of the moves were very difficult. When we were little, we moved around a lot and then got the Azusa Pacific job. And I think I had a 2 and a 4-year-old when I got that job. And then by the end of that, had 2 others, So when we left California to go to North Carolina, it was a little bittersweet because California real estate, a little expensive. So, there was 6 of us in a 1,000 square foot house, you know what I mean? So both kids, or all 4 kids, shared rooms, you know what I mean? So 2 boys in one room, 2 girls in the other. So the part of going to North Carolina was, hey, you're each going to get your own room. You're going to get a big room, So that, kind of the selling point right there. That was pretty good. But, there's always that difficult component. And, I'll say my wife has handled this amazingly because if she wasn't on board, this would all be brutal. So she really set the tempo because I get hired at UNC Pembroke and I leave and she's left with the kids answering all the questions. What's it going to be like? All of that. And if she didn't, and she just said, hey, it's going to be a great adventure. We're going to get an opportunity to meet new people. We're going to have this opportunity to, learn, about the South and all this type of stuff. So that was extremely, helpful through the process. Going from North Carolina to Florida, they had established themselves. They all kind of had friends. That one was a difficult one. It was terrible, but my daughter is like, she went to UNC Pembroke is where I was coaching. And she's like, no, you're not leaving, right? You're not going anywhere. So, hey, the job season's passed. I'm good. She enrolls at UNC Pembroke. Day 2, she comes home and I'm interviewing, doing a Zoom for the UWF job. And she's like, you got to be kidding me. And she was actually, and I taught a coaching football class. She was actually in my coaching football class. So, to then leave 2 weeks later, that was a little frustrating for her. But so, with all that, we have talked about, when I didn't get offered a job, that was part of the conversation. Hey, there's always an opportunity Dad could leave. There's always something. So, when they would hear us talking about different towns, as they got older, it's like, now, why are you talking about Pensacola, Florida? Why are you?
Is this vacation or a job?
Yeah,
exactly. So,
manage that.
Yeah. And that's not easy. Change, the hardest part. And again, changing schools, changing doctors, all that stuff.
Yeah,
None of
tough.
that's easy, but I think they understood, a year into it. Okay. Hey, this was really a great step for Dad, which then became a great step, for them. And I would say, my oldest daughter, it was probably the hardest moving from North Carolina to Pensacola, but she met her husband in Pensacola. My oldest son, he met his wife in Pensacola. So as they looked back on it, they would go, that was really difficult, but boy, the end result's pretty good. And I would say the same thing for me. None of the, coming here wasn't easy, not an easy transition, but the end result, and we're working on that, is very, very beneficial.
Well, Coach, this is just, so many lessons today. We so appreciate, I'm reflecting on, things like asking our colleagues when things aren't going well, what's going on in their lives, what's going on with their families, what's going on in other aspects of the job that might affect. And I need to understand that whole person kind of centering the other person is just so great to hear from you, and really important for the rest of us. And I love your point about helping each person become a better husband, father, employer, employee. That's really, again, centering the other person, which I hear coming through in the way you talk. And don't be afraid to get fired over something you believe in. Reminds us of our, knowing our values and living into our values. And I was thinking, I have not seen the manual, but I do have eligibility left. And based on today, I'm ready to sign up. Well, we appreciate it.
I'll use a line that Bobby Bowden used with a friend of mine, but I'm glad you have eligibility. Probably going to use it someplace else, though. You got to win games now. All right.
I love that. I might use that actually, and I'll credit both of you. That's great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Coach.
No, thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity to be on, and thanks for the questions. Appreciate it.
It's time for extra credit, but I think Lauren and I both have an extra credit
or
opportunity.
It seems like it should be extra innings or something.
Oh,
Got kind of sports thing, but that's
overtime.
Baseball. So
Overtime.
There you go. It's time
Get
for
it
overtime.
right. Extra innings.
I know, right?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Coach
I was going to rock,
upset.
paper, scissor you for the extra credit question.
Oh, okay. Are you ready?
I am ready. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're so slow.
Oh, paper.
All right.
I got caught.
Okay.
You were a
2 out of
little
3.
delayed
Try
there.
again.
That's kind of okay.
All right. Let's try this again. 1, 2.
How about you just go? This is not working. How about you just do yours?
This is amazing. I think. Okay. Well, now I really want to know what yours is. What is your question?
I was just going to ask you if you played team sports, and what did you play, and what was your favorite thing?
All right, that's better than mine. We're gonna go with it. Mine might be fun. We can save it for later. I played all the sports. I was very much a town boy growing up. I know this is shocking to everybody in my life, but volleyball, basketball. I played softball for a while. I played softball until my sophomore year of high school, and my coach, I was standing on third base, and the coach looked at me and she was like, "Okay, you're going to make it home after this next pitch." I said, "As long as I don't have to slide." That's when I knew I was done playing softball.
No sliding?
No sliding. No sliding.
Was that more about injury or dirty clothes?
Injury. I don't care about being dirty, but I wasn't the most graceful slider. My dad tried to teach, I'm sure there's this whole method that you slide like on mattresses at home, sliding, all that. Yeah, Corey's shaking his head too. Everyone's done it. I was terrible. I just crash on my knee. Just not doing it. So volleyball, basketball, I played travel volleyball for a while, all that stuff. How about you?
Cool.
Did you play sports?
I did. My main sport was downhill skiing. I raced.
Is that real?
Yeah.
I feel shocked.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, because I don't really dig winter. You're like, this dude is in Arizona as we record this. He's downhill skiing.
Downhill skiing. Okay. So you're competitive. Tell me more about this.
Yeah. So I played a number of sports, but that was the sport. I'm short and not big. So I got to a point where I couldn't continue playing basketball and football, in those same kinds of
point guard.
Yeah. Right. So, although I was scrappy and competitive and fast, and so had I had size, maybe I would have, but skiing was my thing. And so I, every day after school, we went to the mountain, the hill. This is northern Michigan.
I was like, where did you ski?
I know, right? Well, there's some pretty good skiing up there. It's icy as heck. It's not great sort of Western skiing like Colorado, but elevation's pretty good. You learn to ski on some pretty tough stuff. And there were some competitive skiers that went on to, D1 ski programs. Olympian when I was growing up named Carrie Adgate, who was from Boyne Mountain I grew up right near Boyne City, Boyne Mountain area. But in any case, my best sport was giant slalom.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was my thing, downhill skiing. I love to go fast, and I like to win. So
All right. That's amazing. I feel like we just opened a whole new chapter of you that I didn't know. So
you thought it was going to be basketball with my height, didn't you?
for sure. Center. Downhill skiing just wasn't even a thought. So do you still ski now, or what's your...
I haven't skied in 30 years, probably.
Why?
25 years. I don't own the equipment anymore, number one. Number two, it's just winter's really cold. And I just, there's other things that I would rather do, I guess. Yeah, I haven't. Every fall when I know winter's coming, I think all these people say, you got to get out and enjoy it, you know? And I think, yeah, I really do. I should this winter, I'm going to go skiing, and I just don't. But I probably should try it again.
All right. Did
you
you have any
ski?
major injury? No. That's the one thing. Maybe that's why I'm so shocked too, because we all think about ourselves sometimes. But
Yeah.
I've never downhill skied ever in my whole life.
It's fun. I'd like to see if I can still do it. I was never injured.
It was nothing.
My only sports injury actually was in college. I cracked my sternum playing rugby. I was on the rugby
Loren.
club, and we played some iron workers, some steel workers over in Gary, Indiana. You know, when coach said see squirrel, chase squirrel, you know, that sort of mentality.
Yes.
I mean, I was just sort of like, well, you just run and get hit or hit. That's just what you do. And so they were big.
Wow. We have learned that you are a lot tougher than I am. I played rugby for approximately 2.5 days.
Oh, it's a rough sport.
Yeah.
One season.
I was like, oh, wait, no, this is not.
Yeah, rough.
Remember that sliding story? I guess I just don't like to be hurt. I want to be in charge. All right. Until next time.
All right. See ya.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Inscoe, with your hosts Kelsey Harmon Finn and Loren Rullman.